Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anatomy of an Adaptation. This is a podcast that aims to compare and contrast classic novels with their cinematic adaptations. I'm your host, Nicolo Grasso, and I'm joined once again by the lovely, the wonderful, the amazing Jakub Flasz from the Uncut Gems podcast and flashonfilm.com. How are you doing,
Hello,
Jakub?
I'm doing all right. Happy to be here. Always happy to be here. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you on the podcast. I'm happy that we're having a nice morning recording. You can just feel the energy change. I don't have the weight of the whole day on my shoulders. I'm caffeinated, have had a salty snack, and I'm ready to talk about some quality writing and quality cinema. I hope, maybe, we'll see. Is it good? Is it bad? I think we already know the answer to this. Because, of course, with Jakub, we had already a nice conversation a few years ago in the first iteration of the podcast, talking about Jackie Brown, Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard, made by into Jackie Brown by Quentin Tarantino. And that kind of kickstarted my own love for Elmore Leonard. It was the first novel of his that I'd read. I ended up reading a bunch more. I ended up really enjoying the show Justified, which is based on the Raylan Givens character. And I was like, you know what? It's been a while. It's been a while since we did an Elmore Leonard episode. So why not have the good old Jakub back here to talk about the 1996 novel Out of Sight and the 1998 adaptation by Steven Soderbergh.
You don't seem all that scared.
Of course I am.
You don't act like it.
What do you want me to do, scream? Wouldn't help much anyway. No, I'm just gonna sit here, take it easy, and wait for you to screw up.
Not like my ex-wife.
You were married?
Just for about a year, give or take a few days. It's not like we didn't get along, we had fun. We just didn't have that thing, spark, Gotta have that.
Mm-hmm.
We still talk, though.
Sure. This is not gonna end well. These things never do.
Turns out I get shot like a dog. It's gonna be in the street, not off a goddamn fence.
You must really see yourself as some kind of Clyde Barrow, huh?
You mean a Bonnie and Clyde?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jakub, what are your thoughts on this book? I know you're also a big Elmore Leonard guy. What was it like reading it for the first time, I imagine, correct?
Whoa, Out of Sight? I mean, this is my second time reading this.
Oh, I didn't know
right.
that. Okay.
So you don't remember, because the Rum Punch we did on your show as Jackie Brown was kind of like a part of a collab between Uncut Gems and what then was called Death by Adaptation. Remember that? So
correct.
So
we
did it with Randy and with Sarah from one of the episodes we
just for a minute.
we did one with her. So we did a double bill on the main show of 52 Pickup, and we had to have Sarah because Roy Scheider is in it. And we did Out of Sight, and that was kind of like we based on this also, by the way, like we also decided what would be cool. We just go through like a whole Soderbergh filmography next year, and we did, and then but.
History in the making.
We did Out of Sight as part of this double bill, and what was essentially a triple because on the Patreon we devoted a Patreon episode to Ombre. So we did and actually for that reason I decided, because I was already reading Rum Punch, I decided I'm gonna read all the books the movies we will be talking about are based on, and I read Out of Sight for that show. That was, I want to say 2023. A few years ago.
Yeah. 22, 23.
Maybe 2020.
Yeah, it was before the break, which was mid 2023.
I don't know. It was a while ago. So for me, this was a revisit, and I don't revisit books that frequently unless I have a reason, right? And that's a reason, I suppose.
It's a big commitment.
Although when it comes to Elmore Leonard, like these commitments are not that big as in anybody else's books, because I have yet to encounter an Elmore Leonard book that's like longer than 300 pages. He's very tight. He's almost tight to that sort of level that sometimes it kind of annoys me. I mean, like because he has, and this is like a weird quirk, because it also shows in the film that, and that's something I try to do in my writing, because this is his sort of idea in many ways, is that you don't need words like that and which most of the time. if you wrote like a passage or an essay or a story, go through Control F on your Word document and type in the word that, and then look at every one of them and just find a reason for it to exist. Not that, if you don't find a compelling reason, cut it. But he also does, he almost does it like holistically, that sometimes he will just have people speak in ways where like, do you see this guy hold a briefcase? Do you see this guy holds a briefcase over there? And you almost want to say a guy who holds the briefcase, or that holds a briefcase, because he just cuts all of them out. But anyway, so this is a digression. But like overall, this is a revisit for me. I read Out of Sight just a few weeks back, and that's such a pleasurable experience. This is like I like how the guy writes. These are very sort of cinematically, sort of concocted sort of experiences, also extremely gripping because he has this sort of habit of just dropping characters into sort of scenarios that get progressively more and more complex. As in, you just he introduces a character, gets you to, I don't know, fall in love with him in a way, or her, and then you get to follow them down a rabbit hole, like how they start just making stupid decisions, and then you see how the world collapses around them. And like he's like Mr. Majestic is like that. 52 Pickup is kind of like that. Like there's a bunch of books that kind of follow the same logic of finding a person, dropping them into a weird scenario and trying to kind of get just dig themselves out of a hole, right? So, but overall, the book is fantastic. I mean, it's not the best of his work, I think, because I think the Ram Punch I liked a bit more, and I think I have a few things to say about how he writes women and how he writes romantic relationships. But it's gripping. It's a gripping thriller, and it's also a book that's aware of movies, and this is something that like not many authors really do, I want to say. Because like a lot of highfalutin sort of literary sort of authors, novelists, they will just look at movies as kind of like a peasant's art form, and then they will not like, if they refer to pop culture, they will refer to it as in as though they were also learning about it. Meanwhile, the guy,
But also, I think because at this point it's already like 1996, Elmore Leonard novels have been adapted into films, so I can imagine he's almost so grateful for the extra
Yeah.
success they've granted him, extra mainstream recognition.
I think so, yeah. But then at the same time, he's like, the Out of Sight is essentially kind of like a love letter to Bonnie and Clyde in many ways. And it's actually a love letter to Bonnie and Clyde that's aware of Bonnie and Clyde, where Bonnie and Clyde's referenced, where the characters are aware of it.
Yeah.
They've seen movies, they've been to cinemas, and they can map these sort of, like their own experience. They feel like, I feel like in Road Dogs, which is a sequel to Jack Foley's sort of adventures, you can hear sort of characters going like, "You look like Tony Montana," and they don't have to acknowledge, "Oh, Tony Montana from Scarface, played by No, you don't have, like, we just acknowledge that Tony Montana is a character that the reader is going to be aware of, because the characters are aware of it. And I appreciate how Leonard kind of wrote these sort of passages, these pieces of dialogue, or the characterizations of people who are aware of popular culture without having to like do any throat clearing or sort of like land acknowledgement of, well, this is a film, this was based on this, and that's why it's important here, because there may be someone who reads this who will have no idea who Clyde Barrow was. So you have, but they don't do this. They like mention Repo Man, they mention 3 Days of the Condor, they talk about Faye Dunaway a lot in
Network is mentioned.
and I find it fascinating because it kind of grounds these fictitious sort of stories in the kind of reality that you could almost understand that exists somewhere. Like these people like this sort of existed, and I don't know, Elmer Leonard sat there somewhere on a bench just with a set of binoculars and looking through people's windows, and then imagined that they were up to no good, like they were robbing banks and stuff. But to finish my ramble, because this is what I also weirdly just I'm just prone to doing. I really like Out of Sight, and I'm happy I actually got a chance to revisit this, because like revisiting a book also gives you a chance to sort of like, I don't know, just like take a different angle.
It's like a triple level of hindsight, right? because it's not so much, oh, I'm reading the book because I like the movie. It's I'm reading the book after already liking the movie, after having talked about it on a podcast, after now rereading it for we talked about it again, just like one level after another. Um, yeah, no, just as a, before I go into my actual thoughts on the book, I will say because of the movie references, it I don't know the exact. I don't want to say it made me feel old, but it's kind of made me feel nostalgic of a time I was not even born. Like I was not born in 1996. I was born in 1997. But just the idea that you can have a book where characters talk about Faye Dunaway and they have an extensive conversation about 3 Days of the Condor and scenes in the movie, and you just take it for granted. Like, yeah, these were movies that people watched. They were famous. I was growing up like my parents were like, yeah, 3 Days of the Condor is a movie. You know, most people you kind of imagine their age know or have seen that film. And now it feels so like I cannot imagine anyone just casually mentioning 3 Days of the Condor in a conversation, because back then it must have been 20 years old. So it would be like writing a novel now where people are talking about, I don't know, Brokeback Mountain, something like that.
More like The
I
Matrix.
guess running with scissors, running scared. What's it called? The Paul Walker film.
Oh.
I don't know why I'm thinking about that.
But yeah, like 3 Days of the Condor was 75. And by the way, like Out of Sight as a film is nearly going to be what, 30 years old? Because is it 1998?
It's almost 30 years old.
The book is 30
correct?
years old.
Yeah. So happy anniversary, Elmore Leonard and Out of Sight. But I have to say, yes, I've enjoyed every single Elmore Leonard book I've read. You mentioned the length of these books. It's amazing. I love reading a chunky novel. I love getting lost in the characters, in the detail. We talked about Dead Zone recently, which is a thick book. Stephen King loves to spend time in these worlds and these characters. Elmore Leonard is so economical in a way that's almost embarrassing. It's like, how can you do it? How can you have such short novels, so tight, but still make every character feel alive? Every character feels three-dimensional, like they have a real history, a real past. They don't really feel like caricatures for the most parts, even the ones that are set up to be caricatures. They're there for just for comic relief, or there may be references to characters from other novels, because it has this interconnected world, which is very underrated, I think. Everyone is always talking about other authors, other writers that have their own worlds. But Elmore Leonard weaves these players in and out, just making special appearances, which ends up feeling very playful. And that's also a key word for me with this book. It is a very playful book. It doesn't take itself very seriously.
Oh, it does. It does on
There
occasion.
isn't a lot
though.
of-
Yeah.
Oh no, it does. But just the whole proceedings around it, following Jack Foley, this bank robber, escaping from prison, starting this weird relationship with Marshall, Karen Cisco, going on this adventure of from Miami to Detroit. It's fun, and it's such a breezy read. Such a breezy read. Like it's how do you feel about the way Leonard kind of shifts between characters and tones? You know, it's going from comedy to drama. There's thriller sequences, action sequences, flashbacks. How do you feel about the way he constructs the narrative in here?
Like it's like, as you say, like I think the defining word for this is playful, right? Which it's also I think it's self-aware and playful, because like the author is not really just stumbling into this playfulness. He's not accidentally writing characters that say funny things or just get into weird scenarios that you could misconstrue as just completely comedic. He does it on purpose because he frequently undercuts the sort of the levity with either outright or implied gruesome violence as well, or
Yeah.
a threat of violence, because he does this a lot with, like, he will write characters who how you imagine them in your head as you read, you think they're just, they're just completely defenseless, innocuous, just completely just, like Maurice, Snoopy. He's written to kind of play as this sort of, like, he's this sort of, I don't know, a guy who's just, I don't know, it's like a small-time crook, but he's a stone cold killer, or like the guy Kenny, like the name, give the character a name Kenny, and just imagine what he could be able to do and whatever, and you just drop him in like dialogue conversations if you're like, what the hell's going on, and then just position him as a rapist, right, and a murderer,
Yeah.
right, and I think I think a lot of the genius of Leonard's writing comes out of just finding the sort of the balance between the two, the dark and the light, and I think he just, if I were to like, if for people who don't know what I'm talking about because I can't articulate myself, he writes in a way that, say, Quentin Tarantino makes movies. That's kind of what I remember, like what
I
I
get
think
that.
there is no debate that I think Quentin Tarantino grew up reading his stuff in the 80s, and then he probably found informative. Because the idea of writing characters is very much inspired by how Elmore Leonard writes characters, because these people are not one dimensional. And then what I think what's more important, and this is when I say a mark of really great writing or great character writing, or just in general, because then you're saying like, oh, the guy's economical because he really just doesn't spend time describing anything to you. But it's not like that he finds the path of least resistance of like, what's the minimum amount of words that I need to describe a scenario, or to describe a character, or to write a piece of dialogue. It's not necessarily that. He goes past the show don't tell, right? He includes the sort of idea of like, well, if I want to tell you something about the character, I'm going to put him in a situation where he has to make a decision that will inform this character, right? But he goes past that. He will, like Hemingway would do that as well, where a lot of sort of information about the character or the story is implied, as in like no one says or shows anything. It's just for some reason you just read and you assume that I know this much about this character, and then I assume that this is what he would do. And I don't know how this happens. This is the magic, you know?
It's immense control of writing. And also, I think just experience. Like, I don't remember when he wrote the first book. I want to say it's late 60s, probably.
A novel, or because he
Elmore
wrote a
Leonard.
lot of short stories, and he would write exclusively Western sort of paperbacks in the beginning, right?
Yeah. And it's even like every novel of his I've read, I think they're all around this time, because like Rampant, the Raylan Givens, they're all from like 80s and 90s. They're not that far off. I know he's written more novels even up until his death. But they always have this almost, like paperback, airport novel type quality to them, superficially. It's like, it's a short read, it's a page turner, it's engaging. But he does it in a way that feels, and I'm trying to weigh my words carefully here because I don't want to disrespect anyone who writes this for a living, but it
Pulpy.
just feels, pulpy, but with more to it than just the pulp.
I think
it has more substance to it.
I think he wouldn't really take offense, and I know the guy's no longer with us, but he wouldn't have taken offense by having his work described as pulpy, because he wanted his work to be accessible.
Oh yeah, no, I mean more of like the other writers who write similar novels, but they don't have this lasting impact. They just feel very disposable. His works never really feel disposable. Everyone manages to have like memorable characters, memorable moments. They're not just existing just for the sake of being sold, type of thing. He manages to blend, and I think the Tarantino comparison is actually very good. He manages to blend entertainment with artistic intent in a way that's very impressive.
I mean, do you know what they like? His books, they read as though, or like I imagine, if anyone owns like a hardback copy of Elmore Leonard, you should just look yourself in the mirror and just ask what the hell it is you're doing with your life, because this is not what the author intended. You know, these books are not there to be displayed on the shelf in a beautiful collectible cover. These they're supposed to be rolled and put in your back pocket. These are the kinds of
torn pages and the little edges all crumbling.
These are books that you're like. My sort of proxy for this. These are the kinds of books that like a Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood would be reading on set. You know?
I mean, that's what, speaking of Tarantino, that's exactly what he did. When he released the novel, it came out as this like tiny paperback.
He released it as a
made to
paperback,
be
right?
like one of those books from the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any in terms of the story? What what do you like about this narrative? About do you connect more to the romance that's forming between Foley and Sisko? You mentioned you have some problems with the way he writes
Oh,
female characters
I
in
don't think
romance. How was it in
I don't
this
think I have
case?
problems with how he writes women. I think he has a way of writing women, which if you had a problem, if you wanted to pick a bone, like to pick a fight with him, this is where you would find it.
Okay.
But then again, he's not necessarily, because he writes like, okay, he writes attractive and competent women. That's what he does. Like there's like every single female character in his books, usually you understand, even if they're older or something like this, he would always describe them or characterize them as predominantly either attractive or desirable, or sort of there's going to be some sexuality
Strong.
sort of appended to him, but they would also have something to them. They would not necessarily be just objects of desire. They would understand most of the time. They would understand that they are objects of desire because they would be aware of their own self-attractiveness, but they would have other qualities. They would have other sort of either quirks, character quirks, or other competencies. Like Karen Sisko is a competent U.S. Marshal. Like Jackie Brown has the sort of street smarts, but she's also written as a beautiful woman, right? Like there's there's a female sort of co-lead in 52 Pickup who's also like an older attractive woman. Dawn Navarro, that's another sort of recurring character. She's also an attractive woman with this sort of like a femme fatale sort of tinge to her, right? She's also very competent, and she's manipulative, right? So that's kind of,
Yeah, he plays into those expectations of the genre and the tropes and character archetypes.
yeah. Like remember
is
remember
nice.
in the Rum Punch, or in for me the sort of the biggest sort of proxy for this would be, remember in Jackie Brown, there was, on top of Pam Grier, who's who at the time was an attractive middle-aged woman, there would also be, is it Bridget Fonda? It was Bridget Fonda.
Yep. Yeah.
Who would be kind of like a younger version of an Elmore Leonard sort of female sort of archetype. In here you have, in Out of Sight, in the film, for instance, like that's kind of how I use these proxies. You'll have Catherine Keener and Jennifer Lopez, even though like in Out of Sight, I think Karen Sisko is supposed to be written as the sort of hot blonde, you know.
Yeah. With a Latino tinge, I think they mentioned something like that when they describe her.
I think so, but yeah. So like what
Very young,
but kind of
like
just
25, 28.
yeah,
maybe,
she's in her
something
like
like that.
mid to late 20s, which is kind of just like she's young enough to be potentially vulnerable, but also old enough to be competent. Because like there's
Yeah.
no such thing as a competent 21-year-old. Let's just be honest. It's just like you're too young to have lived a life to know like, oh, I know what I'm doing. No, you're learning. Just relax. Just keep.
Elmore Leonard does know. He's very interested in law enforcement and the way everything works. So he always has this aura of verisimilitude in the narrative, where having someone like her also be like 21.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like
This won't happen,
you could
right?
not reach that level at that age. Yeah.
But then
she's
again,
too
like
young. Doesn't make sense.
he writes her as the sort of, as someone who's still like young and sort of hot blooded, as in like she's hungry for, because she wants to join a task force. She wants to advance her career. She wants to join the FBI. She doesn't want to stay where she is. You know, she's not like content with where she is. That's her driving force. But say what drives me to the story, through the story, is not necessarily like the intrigue of, here's Jack Foley trying to, I don't know, make his way out and survive, because that's something that, you know, that's the pulpy element. What brings life to it is the sort of the forbidden romance, and kind of sort of, you know, like a through the looking glass Bonnie and Clyde, where Clyde Barrow would say, like he would also attract Bonnie to join him on this sort of bank robbing expedition, and they would both die at the end of this. In here, this is kind of like a different sort of side of that, of the same sort of narrative structure, where you have this push and pull between them, because she has a job, she has these sort of responsibilities, and he's just who he is. He's just a force of nature. He's an animal. He's a, like, what is he gonna do? Like, he robbed like 127 banks or whatever, you know. And so that's what draws me to the story, because like the entire intrigue is either driven by either Jack or Karen's sort of pursuit of each other, or complicated by it, because like he could just go and just rip a guy off and in Detroit and just leave. I don't know, go to Costa Rica or somewhere. But but no, he goes like, I need to find in which hotel this woman lives, so that we could, because he just has this idea that they could be together. That it's almost like a fairy tale that these characters try to bring to life, not necessarily. I mean, and then eventually realizing that fairy tales belong in other kinds of books, because this is not one of them, and reality will eventually kick in, right?
Yeah, that's one of the facets I really liked about this entire relationship that they built together in the book. It's always this idea of, okay, these two have chemistry, they have an instant connection, but it just cannot turn into anything more, because, like you said, it's like the wrong story for it to happen. They're the wrong people at the wrong time, or like the right people, but at the wrong time and wrong place in their lives to actually connect. There is also like this not age gap, but like, Jake Foley is much older here. He's middle aged. He's like in his early 50s. So there is this element of him being older and more mature and having seen more of life and just having a different outlook on things, while Karen is more young and full of energy and full of hope and, not naive in any way, but yeah, just a different way of looking at how life is. And it's the type of relationship that could really, someone just like Elmore and Leonard could have pulled off in a way that you actually believe, that you actually like. You get to that moment when they're flirting in the bar and they're pretending to be someone else, and they are instantly connecting, instantly drawn to each other again, talking for the first time properly face to face since the back of the trunk.
Yep.
when he first escaped prison. It's so good. It's just so, I could live in those scenes. I could live in those dialogues. They're so sharp and witty without feeling too clever for their own good. None of the characters feel like they are. I think we had you had these feelings recently with Andy Weir. You have problems with how he writes every character; they all sound the same. Elmore Leonard knows how to make each character sound unique, sound different.
Dear Andy,
sound special,
read
and it's so.
Read some Leonard.
Read some Elmore Leonard. Adapted Elmore Leonard next. But it works. It really, really works. And you get to the ending of the book, which is something I want to get into once we actually talk about the movie, because this is where the main differences actually come in. I was surprised.
Oh, you were surprised?
Shocked,
okay.
I could even say.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was. But yeah, I actually have like one of my favorite passages.
Because you had been seen the movie before, and then you're reading the book, and you're like, "Wow, this is going places this movie never went."
I had seen the movie twice before reading the book for the first time, and I just revisited it earlier this year. I was just like, because there was the Jay Kelly had come out with starring George Clooney, and with the family, I was just like, yeah, if you're in the mood for more George, there's this film he did with Soderbergh, Before the Oceans, which is really cool and underrated, I would say. And it still kind of is, which is weird. I think like everyone who kind of watches Out of Sight, not to get already into the film, but like everyone who watches Out of Sight tends to love it. But you don't hear it mentioned that often. Even when people talk about Soderbergh, generally speaking, at least from what I see, it doesn't get brought up as often as Oceans and Traffic and Erin Brockovich, maybe something more recent, not Magic Mike, what's the name? Logan Lucky. Like all those films, they keep mentioned, oh, you know what's underrated? The Che Guevara duology and all of that. But barely anyone really tends to put Out of Sight high up. But we'll get into that very, very soon. Do you have any favorite passage or quote from the book that stands out to you that you wanted to bring to the conversation?
I have two, and one of them, hold on, let me just quickly, because again, this is me reading it on a Kindle, so I had to take a photograph.
Nice.
Because like the way sort of highlighting passages on the Kindle works still kind of amuses me, so I don't quite know what I'm doing. And now I need to quickly scroll through my phone. So talk amongst yourself. There it is. So I have one passage that so I've got two passages actually. So one of them is kind of just to show you how he like it's from I want to say one of my favorite scenes in the book, which is when Karen visits Maurice's house, and then Kenny's there, and he has this sort of antagonistic sort of conversation with her, where this was a moment where I've like you kind of really fully understand that this guy's a monster, right? Like he goes like, they talk about boxing, and she says, "Oh, because she says to him something to the effect of, "Oh, I used to fight or whatever," and he starts quizzing her on the weight divisions. He goes like, "Oh, like, what are you, bantamweight?" And she says, "No, flyweight," right? And he then says, "You know your divisions. You like the fights, like the rough stuff. Yeah, I bet you do. Like to get down and tussle a little bit, like me and Tuffy. Tuffy was a dog before she got run over. We used to get down on the floor and tussle. I say to her, 'You're a good dog, Tuffy. Here's a treat for you.' And I give Tuffy what every dog loves best. You know what that is? A bone. I can give you a bone too, girl. You want to see it? You're close enough. You can put your hand out and touch it. Like this is the kind of
It's so sleazy.
it's so gross, but and at the same time also illustrates how Leonard also, I can know if you want to pick a fight with him, this is kind of how where you can find the fight to pick, because when he writes sort of say black characters or Latino characters, he will write the way they would probably speak. Like Cuban characters will say, instead of "I told you," they'll say "I told you," TOLE. I told you,
Yeah.
so that he would lose certain sort of sounds in the, or they would just modulate how they speak, um so that you kind of like this guy doesn't speak like like a John Irving character. He's a black guy from Detroit who's led a life of crime. He's not very well educated, I don't think. He's also an ex-boxer, so like you get an idea that he's not going to be speaking in long sort of sentences, and sometimes his grammar is going to be off,
Yeah.
but the idea of, because you've seen, I think this is after they've invaded a guy's house and I think raped the girl and killed them both. You also see how he doesn't have like limits, because he knows she's a federal agent, and he's completely unafraid of anything. And this is where you kind of realize where, okay, I maybe had this guy wrong, because he's not just cool in a situation where he has all the advantage, because you can imagine that Karen Sisko has the advantage because she's, first of all, she's armed and she's trained and she knows what she's doing. She's competent. But you understand the horror of what's happening in there, and that's kind of like, that's one of the two passages I kind of just brought to the table, just to bring you sort of into the sort of the world of understanding how underwritten these characters are, but in a way that you almost like discover who they are as they open their mouths, as opposed to reading about what they do,
Yeah, he manages to write a very, very thin line. We talk about characters and everything. Like, he's not racist or sexist. He understands the culture, he understands that, but also, I don't know. It's something that I was thinking about even when watching the movie. The way he plays into these stereotypes a little bit, which goes back to more the genre and pulpy element of the story. We saw it with Jackie Brown as well in Rum Punch. But there was part of me just thinking, this is almost a bit rough. But he manages to also have the flip side of that, especially in that scene. I forget the character's name, Moselle, the sister,
Yeah,
of
Maurice's
him.
sister, yeah.
Um,
No, is it Kenny's
Maurice's
sister?
sister, and
I can't remember who's someone's sister.
Ken, and I would say Kenny's sister actually, maybe. Yeah. I would say it's Kenny. But that entire scene is like and then she's calling Karen again, and she's supporting her. Like, he manages to balance some of those racial elements in a way that doesn't go full. Because I mean, you mentioned also the setting. Like, it's Detroit. It's not the projects, but how do you call them? It's like I'm trying to think of like positive, like cheap housing. It's the only term that's coming to mind. Like for low income families, they're not people who have well-trained
You're trying
jobs.
to avoid the word ghetto.
Ghetto is the word, right? No, I could have used ghetto. I think it's not.
I think
Can we not use ghetto now?
no, but you kind
Maybe.
of get this. Is
I apologize. I'm
working
Italian.
class.
Jakub is Polish.
Yeah.
We can be mistaken about the correct
I
words.
think it's like a
FPP
working class
honest.
neighborhood, right?
It's a working class neighborhood. Yes. No, that's a great scene. It's a very great scene, and also the way that Karen reacts and just beats his ass.
And then so we wanted to tussle,
It's
we
really
tussled.
sad.
You know.
With a giant stick, but police baton. Yeah. Yeah. Even then, like I know nowadays there's a lot of like anti-police sentiments for good reasons, especially in the States. But Elmore Leonard manages to write these characters in a very compelling way without diminishing the police brutality and abuse of power that they have, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
It's something I always appreciate.
at the same point, you kind of have to also just read a crime book, and this is something I remember saying this to someone. Maybe this was Jack. Like if you write about gangsters but you're like a bleeding heart liberal lefty and whatever, but you feel like you want to write a gangster book, unless you educate yourself about how these people speak and behave, it will just be insincere, inauthentic, and completely phony, right? Because you'll never see like Don Corleone saying like, "My name's Vito, he, him." Like there's no such thing as that. Like these people operate on a different level. Therefore, this is kind of like the N-word defense of Quentin Tarantino, where I think he derives it from Leonard, because this guy wrote characters who would use this word a lot, right? Because they had very little respect for, or he wrote like racist characters. Like there's a lot of characters that kind of just come out of these prison sort of areas, and they're like Nazi skinheads, everywhere. And they're just part of the gang sort of structure in all these places because they would just be there, and then they won't just be, like, "Hi, my name's Mark, he, him," point of privilege. Like, no, none of that's gonna be present. They'll be just referring to black people, in an insulting way. And if you don't capture this, then you run the risk of looking like this skinhead is very, very polite. This is not okay, To a point, by the way,
it's a different time and different place. Yeah,
it's weirdly enough, I think, because I recently read an Elmore Leonard book. I can't remember the title now because my memory just fails me. But there was
there's too many of them.
But it was recently published because it was discovered, like an older book that was kind of found somewhere, right? And it was released by Penguin, and they censored all the N-words in it.
Oh.
Yeah, it was just N -- every single time. It was a couple of
Picket Line? Is that the name?
Picket Line, that's the one, yes. And I was just thinking like, oh, that's interesting, because and at the same time, like like I don't know. And again, this is where you could pick up fight with him as an author if you want to get offended. This is kind of how you can get offended, because you can imply that, like, oh, this is clearly what the author thinks. I mean, like, not necessarily. He writes characters, and he understands what authenticity looks like, and I think this is what happens, right?
I will also say, because we were talking about it earlier, actually he started writing 1951 is the first story he's ever written. 1953 is the first novel.
Okay.
So he wrote for yes, fucking hell, so many years.
And when was he born? 1930 something?
62, 59 years before he died. 1925.
Yeah. So let's just say he's,
he lived almost, he was 87 when he passed away.
He he's from a different era. But yeah, like this is kind of one of those where, like how he writes these characters and how he writes these scenes, because of that, because this of the bravery of just, no, I'm gonna write this that way because this is how these people would behave, this is how they would speak. I want them to sound and look authentic, even though they may look like stereotypes for you. And even
Yeah.
and stereotypes are here for a reason, because some people actually do behave like that, and there's this sort of vicious circle, because they will, like, people from certain backgrounds will actually be aware of certain stereotypes about them, and they will still embrace them, you know. So
Mm.
there's that as well, and I think he was aware of that. And for me, this kind of just makes for very colorful writing, that it doesn't require a lot of words to get you to understand who certain people are, and also how to mislead you and misdirect you, because he will then, like, he will set these stereotypical traps for you. You think like, oh, this guy's like a skinny nerd, whatever. Oh, I know what he's like, and then it turns out he's a killer. Or like, you know, like a small
Yeah.
Cuban guy in Road Dogs. It's just like, oh, you know, like, what is he, like a white collar? What can he do? And it turns out he's just the most dangerous guy in the book. You know,
Hmm.
you know, that's kind of where you can, like, in here, like, what's the guy's name? Chirino.
Yeah.
You know, like he's
Chirino.
written as this guy who's almost just just inoffensive. Like, I don't know, you don't treat him seriously until he kills a guy in cold blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like,
Sets up the stakes in a nice way.
yeah. So that's kind of how I think Leonard writes these sort of compelling characters, because he misdirects you with stereotypes, and then sometimes when it suits the character, he embraces them, because it's a proxy to get you to understand what people look like, what they behave like. You don't have to like read passages about what Jack Foley's eyebrows looked like. What you need is to hear that Karen Sisko, when she was watching Repo Man with Harry Dean Stanton, reminded her of him, and then he's like, "Oh, the guy looks a little bit like Harry Dean Stanton." That's it.
And you can instantly picture him. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. I will also say I do really like how Leonard writes intimacy
Mm-hmm.
in his books, moments of intimacy. And this is one of my favorite passages from the book that I wrote down. It's after the hotel bar flirtation between Jack and Karen. And they're in the bedroom and they've had sex. And then they're just talking. And there's this passage where it says, now Karen took time holding on to him. She said, I don't want to lose you. That's part of the feeling we both have. It's how we got here. But there's nothing we can do. You know that. You're not gonna give up the life you have, and it's way too late for me. I couldn't if I wanted to. Change my name and look for work? You say work to a con, he'll go out the window, not even bothering to see what floor he's on. Look, we knew going in, Foley said. When the time's up, it's up. I say that knowing I love you with all my heart. I sincerely do. It's something that could feel hokey in other parts, but this whole conversation, this whole romance that they have, it's just so effective. And the way the characters are aware of the situation they're in and who they are, and that there's nothing they can do about it and nothing they can change. I don't know, like this entire portion could have been slightly disposable.
Mhm.
The novel could have focused primarily on the heist, the travel, escaping, whatnot. But then it stops and has this whole chapter about them and just talking in the bedroom. And it's
Mhm.
chef's kiss. Absolutely chef's kiss. There's so many nice passages there.
Like, also there's, in, like, I know say the same scene, but just slightly before it, whenever they're about to have sex, and then there's a sort of like when he sees her undress, and then there's like, you don't like, Elmer Leonard will not just go into, oh, the curves of her hips and whatever. Like, he's not gonna go poetic on you. Like, he's not going to go, you know, John Irving, just
Yeah.
or John Coetzee on you. He's going to just go into Jack Foley's head and then remark on like, this woman's like way hotter than you'd ever deserve to be with a woman. Like, it almost feels inappropriate that I'm in the same room with this woman, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and or like
it's amazing.
when he's like just giving you the sort of the first glimpse of what she's like as a character. It's almost like it's like a newspaper sort of clipping where she's photographed outside of a courthouse with a racked shotgun like pressed against her hip, like, you know, just standing there like U.S. Marshal with her shotgun and their sort of aviator glasses. And that's all you need to know to just imagine the rest, right? Because that's the stereotype of that sort of the female sort of competent sort of federal agent. She's this sort of ultra hyper masculine sort of job, and she's still kind of sexy
Yeah.
about it, you know, and that's kind of like the sort of the Elmore Leonard sort of archetype of just like, well, he writes these competent women and he also makes them super sexy, you know, but
Yeah.
not in a
Yeah,
like an
it's one of
indulgent way,
those.
you know.
No, and I want to say, if I unless I read it wrong when I was looking up a little bit about the book and the film, apparently that was one of the inspirations for the book. I think this was a real
Yeah,
photograph that Leonard
that's
saw
it. That's it.
of
That's it.
he just took it as like, I love this character. I can already picture her in my mind, you know, like badass, sexy woman holding a shotgun,
Pretty much.
just posing.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And it works. And it works. And the rest is history. Of course, Elmore Leonard already had multiple novels adapted to film. I forgot, I was going through the list of works. I forgot he wrote The Free Time to Yuma.
Mhm.
So, you know, he's had a historical a historical connection and good link to Hollywood. And also, right before Get Out of Sight came out, Get Shorty
Mhm.
was made. That produced by Danny DeVito. Danny DeVito was like, I love this Leonard guy. Oh, there's a new book coming out. He snatched the rights. It was passed around between director to director until Steven Soderbergh got the job at Universal, and he made the film in 1998 with George Clooney, Jennifer Lopez, Ving Rhames, Don Cheadle, Steve Zahn, and a whole bunch of other names that are honestly a delight to see pop up throughout the film. This was my third time watching the film, and I briefly talked about it before. It's one of my favorite Steven Soderbergh films. I love this one so much. It's so warm, it's so cozy, it's so brilliantly paced. There's something about the structure, which is the primary key difference here, outside of the final act. It's just the way the film is presented. Like, you know, you're starting with a botched bank robbery of Clooney. It sets up the character, it sets up the tone so nicely. It looks amazing. This film is, I forget the cinematographer's name.
Is it Frank Scott? No.
Yeah, Elliot
no,
Davis.
sorry.
Elliot Davis. He was amazing. Scott Frank, the
Scott Frank is a co-writer. At some point, I was wondering, is this Steven Soderbergh's alias? Because he does that a lot.
Yeah. This is like one of the last like proper Hollywood productions he did where he didn't do 90% of the job behind the scenes. He's not his own cinematographer, he's not his own editor, but I mean, the editor he has here is Envy Coates, so you know he's working with the best of the best, truly. And my God, man, this is just similarly to the conversation we had about Jackie Brown a few years ago.
Mhm.
This is just so warm. I just love spending time with these characters. I just love spending time in this film. It's so enjoyable. Maybe one of the I mean, not maybe. It is one of the best performances by George Clooney. It manages to blend his snarky persona with his charming persona, this element of suave charm, also bit of danger to him, but he has a heart of gold. Jennifer Lopez is I never really consider her to be that great of an actress, but I think just generally she's not in great films. Because when she is in a good film, she can be great. And this is one of her best roles, 100%. Ving Rhames, Scene Stealing. I could go through the entire cast. I think this is an excellent film. I love it more each time I watch it. I'm curious, Jakub, what are your thoughts
I love it.
on Soderbergh's Out of Sight?
I love it. I mean, I'm not sure if it would rank like really up to it's kind of somewhere in the top 10 of my, like, I've seen all of his stuff at this point. All the stuff that I could see, because I think he, like, by the time you finish a sentence, Steven Soderbergh has finished a movie, you know. He's an extremely prolific guy. But what I will say is it's probably, I won't say definitely one of the sort of my favorite of the era, because, you know, like, the guy came out with like Sex, Lies and Videotape, which is just a different beast, and then follow this with a string of
Completely,
really
yeah.
experimental movies, some of which I really like The Underneath. I'm like one of the 2 people in the world who would go to bat for it. But this is kind of like a mark of change. This was actually a movie that I think kicked the door down for his Hollywood career, really, because that was,
Yeah.
if this had been a failure, as in, like, if people didn't connect with it, or he had done something stupid to the story structure or whatever that just, I don't know, alienated viewers, you wouldn't have Ocean's trilogy directed by Soderbergh. That's plain and simple. Like, this guy wouldn't have been an Oscar-winning director because his career would have been completely finished, right? So this was kind of like a last.
Yeah, I mean, he basically did right after this one. He had The Limey and then Erin Brockovich's Traffic in the same year.
Yeah, and
it's crazy to think about.
yeah, but he wouldn't get the sort of these opportunities if this hadn't been, because this movie was kind of being produced on the back of the success of Get Shorty, on the back of or Jackie Brown being developed by the sort of the hottest commodity in Hollywood, because like 90s is essentially Tarantino's decade, in terms of
Yeah.
influence. He's one of the most prominent voices in that time, together with like Spike Lee and whatnot, but he's kind of there. And yeah, the film, like you mentioned, like Jennifer Lopez, like this is where like book nerds will go and like, oh, she doesn't look anything like this. This is stupid, you know. But for me, like Soderbergh and Anvi Coates, I think she did the casting. She's a casting director. I can't remember now. But anyway, so like the way she was cast is kind of not basically to resemble Karen Sisco's characterization physically, but to give you the vibe of, you need to hire someone who will look great in heels and who will also look like they could kick your ass. I really like her here, and actually at the same time, I think, you know, like the understanding to kind of hire George Clooney to get the sort of the lead role as essentially a guy who's transitioning from TV, right? Who wants to become a star. Like I think Soderbergh and Clooney, they kind of just formed this partnership where they essentially just ascend to stardom together, right? And as a result, like everything just works in this film. It's very easy to watch, and at the same time, it's easy to almost overlook how innovative it is in terms of, because it's like, if you kind of sort of think about it, it's very new wavy, and this is something that Soderbergh has been doing for, I want to say, most of his sort of early career. You know, this movie is chopped, as in like timelines are weird. You just don't get. Some of them are kind of slightly color coded already. Like remember Traffic? Traffic's color coded. Like, you know, like certain things are blue, certain things are, you know, like this is where the Mexico sepia tones come from.
His Mexico filter.
Yeah, but this is where it comes from, doesn't it? Traffic.
Yeah.
But you can see how some elements of the story that take place in different geographies or in different timelines are kind of slightly color graded slightly differently, which kind of doesn't make it look confusing. But this movie jumps between events freely. It almost just just freeze frames between certain things. Sometimes it freeze frames throughout scenes. I don't know why, but you know, like it does, because it just wants to underscore the importance of certain moments. Like just before they kiss, there is like a 2-second freeze frame. And yeah, it's a very, I think the word you used was underrated, and this is totally true. This is an underrated film, even though people still rate it as this is a good 90s movie to watch. But even with that, with the appreciation of people telling you this is a great film, that you can almost always tell them there's more, you know. Just look closely, there's more in it.
Yeah, just when you start with the cast, honestly, I think it should be of great appeal because of that alone, right? Because you're just looking at it outside of the main players, of course, but you have like Isaiah Washington, Catherine Keener, Albert Brooks, who plays Richard Ripley, who's I will say almost a non-character in the book.
Well, he's not there in the final act. He's not there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the most surprising thing to me. Let's just jump into like the differences, not to focus exclusively on the film. For the most part, this is the book. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like you're watching, it's like, okay, yeah, you get a little bit more of Ripley in prison. You get a little bit of more development for Snoopy, for Maurice Miller, which also makes it so that Don Cheadle can just have fun and improv and play around. I listened to the commentary track between Soderbergh and Scott Frank, and they were pointing out how many like improv lines there are here, things that came up during rehearsal that they started to implement and expand upon. And you can kind of feel that energy, like some of the humor came out because of Don Cheadle just improving. But it's so you get to the ending, and that's what shocked me about the book, because for instance, the character, not only is Ripley not there, and the entire dynamic of the ending just shifts completely compared to the film. But Buddy dies.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy, the sidekick of Jack Foley, his longtime friend, and they've been in and out of prison together and did things and whatnot. He just dies. And I was like, no way. No way they killed him. And then you listen to the commentary and they were like, yeah, we couldn't do that. Like, we love Ving Rhames too much and we love the character too much. He needed a happy ending. We're like, yes, you're right. He needed the happy ending. He needed to go out with the diamonds and let him live to fight another day, and enjoying life. I found this entire climax to work in a way that, I think that's the studio element you were talking about. Soderbergh proved he can pull off crowd pleasing in a way that works for audiences. I mean, the film was a flop when it came out. It wasn't like a big box office success. Again, it's underrated. It's not that
It became
well
a hit on
known. You would
video,
think
though.
more people. It did, yeah. It's one of those. I think also because, like, I remember when I was growing up, starting to watch. I hate to say it, like I was watching Watch Mojo when I was like 15 or something. Those early YouTube videos, where they would talk about movies and recommendations. And Out of Sight would pop up occasionally, like you said, in like underrated 90s movies, best George Clooney films, and also like one of the best love scenes in cinema. And there is something about the editing in this film that kind of matches the writing of Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
During this scene of intimacy. You don't really see the sex. You just see the build up to the sex and you're hearing the conversation they have in the bar. But it's so sensual. The chemistry between the two of them is so palpable. I think making Foley a younger actor was a very inspired choice. Because it doesn't feel weird. Like I also listened to the audiobook. I was switching between reading the book proper and listening to an audiobook. And there was an older reader reading it with kind of like a gravelly voice, which works for Jack Foley. But then whenever they had the interactions together and you're hearing the dialogue, you can feel the age difference. You can feel how slightly weird this is. Of like, okay, yeah, this guy is 50, she's 28, he could be her father. They kind of acknowledge some of these things in their writing. But instead having, young, sexy George Clooney with young, sexy Jennifer Lopez works. And it works really well. And those crossfades are sexy as fuck. Just from an editing standpoint, this entire movie is just sexy. The lighting, man, the escape from prison, and the black sky, dark blue sky, and the searchlights.
That's Envy Coates
and
editing,
Clooney
yeah?
coming
That was-
out in the mud. Yeah, Envy Coates. It's
I don't know why I was
great.
saying.
Truly
I
some
don't know
of the
why I
finest.
accused her of casting the film.
Yeah, when you were saying, I was like, she didn't do the
No, it's just
casting.
like,
How'd she
I
get
don't know
it?
what I don't know where my head's at. Apologies. I have dementia.
The cough is still kicking in. How do you feel about the differences
Oh,
between the book and the film? Primarily about the different structure and the different ending to the story.
I think you know what this
Like differences, like the ending itself is the same kind of, but
if they because what they leave out for those at home, if you don't know, like what they leave out is a brutal rape scene, and essentially just acknowledgement that Kenny is a monster, right? That's what they leave
Yeah.
out. They leave out a bunch of bodies because like Buddy dies and he dies abruptly, like he gets a shotgun to the chest through the door, and that's it.
Yeah. Which is present in the film, like that moment of the shotgun through the door.
Yeah,
It's just that Buddy's not
no
there.
one's there, right?
Thankfully.
But the whole set piece is kind of written around the tension of these two young people being stuck in their house sitting for the guy who's just left, right? And you like you're supposed to not know what's going to happen to them, but you know what's going to happen to them because it's a recreation, essentially what they did like I don't know 100 pages before in a different house, right? And this is where you kind of get to see what's going to happen, right? In the film, they kind of like the previous home invasion. They kind of just paint over with very new wavy visuals, but there's an implication that like there's some dismemberment and stuff. But you don't really get
They
acknowledgement.
have like
of
an
that.
accent, things.
Yeah,
And you
it's
see,
all
I
implied.
will say also, we haven't mentioned him properly so far, but Steve Zahn,
Steve Zahn's
really
fun.
good in this film.
Very rarely
The
I
way
find him.
like he's always
but
wearing the sunglasses.
yeah, wearing sunglasses indoors
but-
as well.
Amazing.
Although Ving
I
Rhames,
better not be wearing those fucking sunglasses at night. And there
yeah,
he is with the sunglasses at night. But also, like, his character shift, the one of was it Glenn Michaels, the character,
hmm
right? The way he shifts, where it's kind of a comic relief, spineless characters of sorts, like, just kind of like wandering through life. That moment when he starts being with the Detroit crowd and he witnesses this horrific violence and is just ready to call it quits and leave, and he cannot find the right moment for it. I don't know. I found it moving in a very simple way.
hmm
Again, side character getting decent development.
yeah, because
It's something that a lot of writers forget nowadays, and it adds to the story. And it becomes an essential player. Right from the beginning, he is an essential player, right?
I have a feeling this is just something that was just natural to Leonard, because the way he writes through implication through stereotypes and through sort of misdirection through stereotypes, he even gets the tertiary characters to look lifelike, right? Because he doesn't even have to spend too
Mhm.
much time just describing or just spending time with them. All you need is a couple words and a few words of setup, and then you're already in the mood to imply a lot of things based on their people's behavior, and that's kind of how you feel like you got to know Glenn Michaels, right? But coming back to the final sort of set piece, I think I think that's an inspired choice to kind of tone down the darkness that the book
Yes.
gets to, because it would have been at odds with everything that came before. Because in the film they really tried to embrace this one, like you said, like it's very light, it's very sort of approachable and accessible, and this would have been a turn. So in order to
Yes.
get adapt the sort of the final act the way um, it was written in the book, you'd have to treat the entire thing like Pulp Fiction. This would have to
Mhm.
have the sort of the violence would have to have been outright and in your face a lot of the time, and it's not, right? Because you want to flesh out the romance, you want to make it a little bit of like a fairy tale among bank robbers. But in I want to say, like, if this movie got into, say, Quentin Tarantino's or Robert Rodriguez's hands, this would have been different, and I think would have been closer to the book, and would have been probably more cathartic and more violent. um
Mhm.
but it would have been kind of, yeah, it would have been a different story, and I think you'd have to do other things to flesh out the romance, or maybe even kind of just forgo it completely, just treat it as a like as a fantasy,
Cops and robbers type
or
story.
like a cops and robbers type story with a fantasy, as in like this never happened for real, because these people just were on like completely different frequencies, like as characters, right? But so I think this is the correct choice. And actually at the same time, and like I don't know if it, because I think the movie made some money, as in like made what's nearly $80 million, so just about probably turned a profit, and then definitely turned a profit on video, but it was critically acclaimed, right? So I think it was the right choice, because it kind of just writes this line of just like going just slightly inappropriate. There are implications of what Kenny may have done to this woman, Midge. Is it Midge or
Mhm.
Bridget? Midge, I think. Um,
Midge, played by Nancy Allen.
yeah,
And I
Nancy Allen.
forgot
That's
she was in the
exactly
movie.
right.
When I rewatched it the first time, I was like, "Oh shit, she was in this, right?"
Uh,
Like every time someone appears, Dennis Farina
Dennis
playing the
Farina.
father of,
That's exactly right.
Karen Sisko.
Michael
Amazing,
Keaton reprises his
amazing.
role in a blink and you miss it sort of scene where he gets made fun of by Dennis Farina.
Rainy Colette.
Rainy Colette goes
Also,
wearing a
like
T-shirt that
we
says
talked about
FBI.
this FBI. Like we talked about it in Jackie Brown, but Elmore Leonard knows how to write character names.
Yeah,
Like all of the characters in here, like top notch character name writing.
yeah. So
And I forgot, like I was looking it up. This was also nominated for 2 Oscars,
yes,
for best screenplay and best editing. So it got eyes on it, and it did help Soderbergh's career
hmm
going forward. But it is a shame that it's not more talked about. But I think, you know, great film. I follow basically no one that doesn't like this movie. Everyone is like 4.5, 5. Some of the most fun you can have watching a
this is how
film.
you choose friends.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, like a secret handshake type thing. Shout out to the Secret Handshake podcast. Love that podcast. But I will say it was fun listening to the commentary track of Soderbergh, where he was talking about actually what you were saying about the violence and the tone,
mhm.
because they originally had less violence in the film, but then they added some inserts back in. For instance, when there's a stabbing in the prison
Yep.
early on,
Mm-hmm.
where you're setting up
Well,
Maurice
yep.
being,
Yep.
actually someone you should fear. He was like, yeah, originally we didn't have like a close up of the shiv going in, and people were like, this is not violent enough. And when they shot the insert and put it in, they were like, this is too violent now.
But see, like even
And
with
so it's
that,
always this push and pull where you don't win, you never win.
yeah. But even with that, you see like Maurice, like I don't know, just assaulting a guy and killing him on the way to whatever Chow, and you still don't buy him as an dangerous character, because Don Cheadle undermines that characterization immediately, because he just lures you into this idea that he's still like a friendly guy. Like like they go into this sort of library sort of bus stop, and they end up on like a comedic note when the guard shows up, and they'll just pretend they're reading a phone book or whatever, or an encyclopedia, and like
We're just reading and
just
shit.
reading and shit. But so you don't take him seriously until you do, and I think that's kind of
Yeah.
But yeah, I can I can see there were like some there's a few inserts when he's trying to get the gun after White Boy Rick, not White Boy Rick, is it White Boy Rick? White Boy Bob.
At the end, in the climax.
White Boy something. He shoots himself in the head, and then Maurice tries to get his gun, and
So good.
and there's these sort of insert shots of this sort of bloodied gun that he's trying to kind of whisk out of his hand. You could imagine that this was
White Boy
put-
Bob, yeah.
White Boy Bob. White Boy Rick is a film.
Was it the fucking Matthew McConaughey? Was it?
I can't remember.
No.
Is it? Oh, is it Josh Lucas? Hold on. White
Is
Boy
it
Rick.
Josh Lucas? White Boy Rick, it's Matthew McConaughey, yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay. Matthew McConaughey.
Anyway, yeah, and again, like that's a dark comedy moment that really works. But also that's something that impressed me after having read the book. So much of the movies basically seem foreseeing the same thing that happens in the book. Like they only really expand Ripley and Miller throughout the story, which is actually a nice change. It's something that while reading the book, I almost forgot was not present there, because Leonard is such a master craftsman at creating these characters and making them feel believable and lived in and all of that we discussed already. But watching the film, that scene feels essential, like the semi-friendship that Foley builds with Ripley, and this connection that then leads to the climax of the film, and he's hiding in the house. It's so seamless, it's so natural. Scott Frank did a really, really good job adapting the book. Honestly, it's impressive. It does remind me of what Tarantino did with Jackie Brown, where it's basically the same story, but there are enough slight changes that, dare I say, improve the novel. I don't want to get too ahead of the final question yet, but I do appreciate it. And it leads to, honestly, one of my favorite parts of the film, which is, like stand up and clap. Like I watched it with my family when it happened, and they reacted in a very lively way. But you get to that final scene with Jack Foley in the back of the trunk. He's being brought to prison, and Samuel L. Jackson comes in. And they have this conversation, and Karen Sisko is just smiling, and they just drive away. And it's just like that's an ending. That's how you end a movie, right? It's so good. It's so good. How do you like this? Do you like the more crowd pleasing element of the story? You don't have Buddy dying. He goes on off with the diamonds. The villains are caught. Justice has prevailed. Jack Foley will go on to fight another day and escape another prison. How do you feel about
It
it?
almost speaks a little bit. It's a bit different. I mean, I think it speaks to the same sort of sentiments that the book kind of alludes to, but because it's kind of like an unresolved romantic relationship. Like this, essentially, this Karen Sisko doesn't say no to him, right? She goes like, well,
When he's like bleeding out on the stairs of the.
like, yeah, we can't make anything out of this now, but maybe there is a universe in which we're together, or we get a chance to explore whatever's between us, right? So I think that's a different exploration of a similar sort of idea, But yeah, whenever Sam Jackson just walks into the scene, it's kind of fun because you almost see this as a, like, I know this is not the same character, but you see this as a connection to like the greater Elmore universe, you know. And it's
After Rainy Colette, that
Yeah.
you already had Michael Keaton.
Yeah, because like that's kind of how I've always like I've started, like, the more you read this guy's books, you see how they're connected through these sort of like jigsaw puzzles. Like they're not necessarily connected through storylines, but there will be like one character here connects to one book from one end, and then in the same book like a different character connects to another book, and they're kind of like there's like a chain or like a web connecting to different books. And I think this is also like an acknowledgement of certain of the fact that this story is not over yet. And actually, you know, like I like this of the happy ending, as in like it's not overt, as in they drive into the sunset together. No, there's an ambiguity in here because they also have to acknowledge the basic reality of she's like she has it's like a phone conversation with her father. So you're saying like, well, you have, because this is something that she throughout the book she has phone conversations with her dad who keeps telling her like, whatever you're trying to do, this is kind of stupid. Like, remember what your job is, okay? You know. And I think
And I love that it just gets the entire situation already from the beginning.
Yeah.
The father is just like, yeah, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
You were talking in your sleep, you know that?
Yeah, hey yourself.
Having a sexy fantasy.
Yeah, so yeah, I like the ending. I like look, I don't just, you know, head out the house with a pitchfork whenever an adaptation is different from the source material, because, you know, like, you're allowed to make changes. I think as long as you
we always encourage changes.
Yeah, as long as you kind of respect certain ideas, or the changes you make respect their own logic, and they're not just here to, you know, just to be destructive or to be edgy, you know. It's kind of where my problems with Robert Altman come into play, because like I don't like when people just try to performatively ruin things. If they want to ruin things, make them make it make sense, you know. Make me think that you actually mean something, or that you actually care about what you're destroying, because there's something bigger that you want to build out of this. Like, if you want to dismantle a Lego Death Star that someone painstakingly put together, build something of value with the pieces that you've acquired from destroying it, you know.
Yeah. No, it's something I always say. You need to, like, the two types of good adaptations for me are the ones that are like faithful to the core of the novel. They can still have changes, or you have a completely different idea and you jump off from the source material, but to try and to make your own thing, to cover your own themes and topics and whatever.
Yeah.
But to just like some of them can feel insulting. Out of Sight is not insulting. Out of Sight is really respectful of Leonard's writing. Some parts are verbatim the scenes from the book. Like the scene you mentioned, actually, the quote you had, the passage from the book, I want to see it's verbatim or close to that.
Yes.
In the film.
Yes.
That entire scene, it just plays out beat for beat in the same way, and it's amazing. It's a great scene. You're just reading the book and it's like, this is a great scene, and you put it in a film and you don't need to change anything because it works.
Yeah.
It's visual, it has good dialogue, it has an element of threat, it has a nice playoff, it's kind of funny in its own right by the end. Not funny, but like satisfying, cathartic.
At the end, like, after this sort of like a few more paragraphs, when she just beats his ass and says like, you wanted to tussle. Well, we tussled. Ah, great. Well,
and you can hear the music, you can hear the score, she leaves the house, right? It's just like, yeah, that's a film scene. But then for me, yeah, it's a great film. Like, if I had to pick a favorite scene, there's many scenes that I think are great. I love the Catherine Keener and Jennifer Lopez scene. She's very little of and Luis Guzman. Just like, I just want to know the magic trick the girl saw didn't have. How do you do it? Well, he's just being arrested. It's so fun. But of course, like, two standout scenes, which are kind of like the two scenes of the film: the trunk scene and the hotel scene. The flirtation, but the trunk scene especially, and it was fun listening to the commentary track. I think I've said this exact quote like once or twice already. It was fun listening to the commentary track. But Soderbergh actually revealed that it was meant to be a one-shot, the entire trunk scene, and they shot it as such, and they edited it as such, Just like one shot, they're talking in the car, no editing, no cutting, no nothing. And then they previewed the movie, and it was like one of the worst parts of the preview screenings. And the producer was like, you know what? The movie's 15 minutes too long. That scene needs to be different. And so they had to go and reshoot it. And it's great. And it works great. And he was talking about, sometimes producers can have good feedback and audiences can have good feedback. And you can feel that, I think, even kind of like to draw things to a close with Soderbergh, you can almost feel the shift where he has these art house sensibilities. He has this way of thinking that's different from conventional Hollywood filmmakers, but he's also trying to get into that business more and more, into that industry to be accepted, and is making compromises and is learning how to make a proper entertainment product that can still feel artsy. And he's like, oh, I needed this lesson, actually. I needed to learn these things.
Yep.
To then end up making something like Erin Brockovich and Traffic, which are mass appeal movies, but they don't feel watered down in any way. And this doesn't feel watered down in any way.
This is kind of, I think, the origin of, say, one for me, one for them kind of methodology that he then adopts, as in, like, he understands that, like, this movie is not supposed to be just a small thing that I get off on. This could and should have a wide appeal. Therefore, I need to just stop obscuring the picture with my style, or just tone it down a little bit so that it's accessible. And then this is how you win. And meanwhile, then you get the Limey, where he gets
Limey a bit more.
The Limey is very new wavy.
Yeah, was that more of a personal feel?
Yes,
right?
and it's very new wavy, right? And because it's kind of like Point Blank, right?
I've not seen it yet. I really want to watch it though.
The Limey?
It's like one of my last Soderbergh
Go
films.
and watch it. It's good. But then he would just go and just make a few films on the sort of studio dollar that he knows need to make money, and they do. And then he goes and does, like, I don't know, Full Frontal or Bubble or something like that, right? Meanwhile, like in the 90s before it, he would just do these movies in succession. Like King of the Hill is kind of like a weird sort of prestige adjacent new wave film, Kafka. And
I was thinking about you in the commentary track. He talks so much about Schizopolis.
It's one of his best films.
From Schizopolis.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, this actor was in Schizopolis. I know you're listening to this and you've definitely watched it. Everyone has seen Schizopolis.
Yeah.
Which I think was the last one he made before this one, or close to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Schizopolis, Grey's Anatomy, and then Out of Sight.
Yep.
So the pain was fresh in his memory of no one watching Schizopolis. A movie that came and went just like that. But do you have then, Jakub? Do you have a favorite scene from the film?
Oh, I love how she
like
just dresses down these three douchebags. I mean, two douchebags who approach him. But that's sort of the follow-up sort of conversation. Yeah, the follow-up conversations where the movie kind of just, that's its core. When these two people kind of just adopt these sort of fake names and just have this great. That's where this movie shines. That's kind of what I wanted to say. Like the sort of the conversation they have in the sort of hotel bar. That's kind of where this movie peaks.
It's amazing. So sharply written, so the lighter coming into frame, and George sitting there. It's just, we used this term before other times in other conversation, but that's cinema. You're watching it.
Cinema.
This is cinema, man. Oh,
yeah, it is.
Then
it is.
I do have one last question for you, and I think this is one of those rare cases where it's not that easy. It's not that clear cut. We've talked about Out of Sight. At the end of the day, after this whole conversation, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the novel by Elmore Leonard, or do you prefer the film by Steven Soderbergh? And it's Sophie's choice, I think. For once, it's usually easier. It's usually like, oh, the book was much better. Oh, the film is such an improvement. Which one do you choose here?
Oh, this is a Sophie's choice question, because they're both kind of sort of. I mean, they both have some flaws, some quirks that you kind of have to look past. So they're kind of sort of equivalent in my mind, but they kind of serve a different purpose. So like at this point, I'm close to not being able to make a choice. But if I had to make a choice,
okay.
If I had to make a choice. And this is maybe
your force, gun to your head.
Gun to my head. I think I think I have to choose the. This is hard because I was also almost said I almost said the book, but I'm like, no, I can't say the book. I think I have to choose the film actually. But this is,
Okay, wow.
but I don't know why. But yeah, I don't know honestly, because they're both like it's honestly 50.000001 to 49.9999999. This is how close this is. It's almost as
It's just
close as
because you have to
I can. I
choose.
had to
There's
choose,
no in
right?
between. I get it though. I get it. I will fairly easily say I prefer the film, but simply because it's something I've noticed with Leonard. I want to say I've enjoyed to loved everything I've read
Mm-hmm.
so far of his works. They're incredibly enjoyable, but there is something in the film adaptations of his that I've seen. I've not seen all of them, of course. I don't want to imply that I'm still missing some key ones. Like I've not seen Get Shorty, I've not seen Ombre yet, but they always manage to be just adjust the story a little bit to fit the cinematic medium. That it just really works
Mhm.
for me. It becomes like you tell me, Nick, you have to choose. Are you gonna reread the book or watch the film? I'm going to the film. You give me a list of 10 movies. If Out of Sight is on that list, and you're like, Nick, you have to choose. What are we watching tonight? I will probably pick Out of Sight. If we're going for like a light, entertaining evening, because I think it plays so well. Again, I showed it to my family for the first time, and they were so captivated by it. It's a 2-hour movie, doesn't feel like it. The distinction between the Miami section, the prison sections, and the Detroit section works brilliantly visually, narratively, in terms of tone. I think it's an excellent film. I ended up giving it finally 5 stars.
Oh wow.
I imagine this is a 5-star movie for
I
you.
think I
at this
left it at
point?
4.5 last time. I was thinking like, is it? Am I ready to give it 5? And I think I'm not yet.
Yeah. No. What's keeping you then? Last question. What's keeping you from that 5? From that perfect number?
I there's
Hmm.
there's a moment in the at Adam's hotel sort of section where I think they compress the narrative just a tiny bit too much.
With the police coming to get them and
Yeah,
they're getting outside.
and then there are certain sections of the film where you like if you haven't read the book, you wouldn't have very much a clue of what's happening. Like say, I need to go and buy some shoes, and then cut to he's in a hotel room looking through hotels and asking for Karen Cisco. Like I know that he knows that she's there because she's photographed somewhere, and then he's looking for her because he wants to hook up, and that's how he set up the hotel conversation scene. But if you don't pay attention, it's kind of like it's very. I think it's not want to say very poorly, but this is where the movie kind of stumbles in kind of telegraphing its logic to where everywhere else, it really does a stand-up job, you know.
Yeah. It is also delightfully of its time. It's
Yeah.
something I was thinking about rewatching it and even reading the book. It's like, man, this would play so differently, same narrative, but in 2025, 2026.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a 90s story using 90s technology, where so many elements would change. Even just like I was thinking, like the security at the house would be different. There would be CCTV cameras, or like God knows how many like hidden cameras around the house. It would play out differently, I think. The safe would be different. I
Just
love
the
the part where they're
invention of
just
the
shooting at the
smartphone
safe.
over these things.
Smartphone, location,
Yeah.
geolocation, right? Looking for him, the sister, the conversation, so many elements. And I also kind of love it for that. I love movies that are timeless, but also love movies that are of a time. And I think this is both timeless and of a time. And that's also why I love it. And yeah, Out of Sight, excellent film. I will also say, really good book, excellent book even. Just easy read, quick read. If you're here because of the movie or listening to this conversation and you've not read the book, please go read the book. Please
Do
read more of
yourself a
Elmore
favor.
Leonard. It's do yourself a favor. Every time, this is kind of like similar to the Stephen King, right? We talked about Stephen King recently. It's the same thing for me. It's like, you know what? Now I feel the need to go through like a couple more
Yep.
novels by Leonard, just because they're so quick. You said it's like if you listen to an audiobook, it's probably like a 4 to 5 hour audiobook. It's not that long. It's gonna take you 3 hours to read the book, most likely, maybe 4 at the longest.
Like, you know
So
how
just
people
do
set
it. Enjoy
themselves up
yourself.
with challenges, like I want to read a book a week, and you kind of have to stack the deck slightly because you can't really just pick like 52 books that are like 600
Count of
pages
Monte
long.
Cristo.
But you can go through Elmer Leonard's entire catalog in a year on a week by week basis, and you'll be fine, and you'll make that challenge. You know?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. With that, Jakub, thank you so much for joining me to talk about some more Elmer Leonard, to talk about some more books and films, because it's nice. It's nice to read, it's nice to watch, and then it's nice to just talk with you about these things. Where can our listeners find your work, your writing, your talking online?
So, okay, my writing. So you can find me at flashonfilm.com. FLASZ on film.com is where I write. This is where I'm trying to be the most prolific. Also, at Flash on Film is kind of where this thing lives on social media. Personally, I'm Jakub Flasz on Letterboxd and Blue Sky. So if you want to follow me there and reach out there, that's kind of how you can do it as well. Also, the Flash on Film has grown into a video thing because I have needs to rant into a camera now. So I think you can find Flash on Film on YouTube and TikTok as well. So so you can go and look at my mug and just try to look at me, try to make sense, and then try to keep things precise when I'm failing sort of miserably at this. But that's kind of how I feel like I'm going to be doing this. Like I'm not a big fan of sort of polished video essays because this is how AI is going to replace these things first. But trying to get AI to replicate quirks of someone who's trying to stumble through the English language is going to take them a little bit more longer. So I think I'm safe. And also check out the podcast I run, which is Uncut Gems Podcast. UncutGemsPodcast.com is where the sort of the HQ kind of is for all these sort of episodes. And Patreon.com/UncutGemsPod is where we have extra shows. So we talk every week about movies that are kind of slightly a little bit off the beaten track. Maybe didn't connect with audiences, maybe didn't connect with critics, or maybe they did, and they just fell to the curb at some point. So that's kind of what I do. It seems like a lot actually, but yeah, that's kind of where I am.
It is a lot. It's a lot of goodness, though. I highly recommend people go listen. The links are in the show notes below. I think by the time this episode comes out, I've definitely guested on a conversation about Tootsie, the 1982 Sidney Pollack film, so you can also hear me guesting on the show occasionally. Meanwhile, you can follow me everywhere at NickyGrind97. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Anatomy of Adaptation Pod to stay up to date with all past, present, and future releases. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a lovely day, and we hope to hear from you soon. Goodbye.